Hi, my name is Jason Pinter. I'm the author of this book right here, The Mark, which is in stores now, as well as The Guilty, which will be in stores on February 26, 2008. And this is my very first vlog or whatever you want to call it. I'm still trying to figure out a title for this, and thankfully a lot of readers have offered some really good suggestions. But I'm still trying to look for that title. A couple ones that have stuck out have been Park Place or Parker Place, which, as anyone who's read The Mark will know, that's the main character of The Mark, Henry Parker. Another one that I kind of liked, was kind of catchy, is The Man in Black Talks Back. The reason being that my blog is called The Man in Black, and it just sounds kind of neat. The only problem there is I'm not actually the Man in Black. Johnny Cash is known as the Man in Black, and my blog is not called The Man in Black because of Johnny Cash. It's actually called that because of Stephen King. I've been a huge Stephen King fan my whole life, and I remember when I was younger reading The Gunslinger. And the opening line of The Gunslinger is, "The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed." And I love that line. It's one of my favorite opening lines. I think it's almost a book in and of itself. It's just such a vivid portrait of kind of good versus evil, and that's something that I try to use in my books. Where to begin? I'm home in my apartment right now. It's a great location. I kind of like other author interviews or press clips where they always seem to be walking alongside a barn or sitting in their car, and that'd be kind of misleading here because I do 99.9% of my work in this apartment right here. And I'm kind of lucky because if I did a lot of my work in Starbucks or another coffee shop and I tried to do this vlog, I don't think they'd ever serve me again. So this works out for me and for you. So I want to kind of talk about the genesis of The Mark. It really first came from the character, from Henry Parker. I've been a huge crime fiction fan my whole life, and I wanted to create a character that was a little closer to my age. I'm 28 now. I think I was about 25 when I started writing it. I felt that in crime fiction there weren't a lot of heroes around that age who were kind of good people, who had good heads on their shoulders and weren't kind of degenerates in some way. I felt there was room for a younger hero that could appeal to traditional crime fiction fans, but also a younger generation who really, I felt, didn't really have someone to follow through a series. So Henry kind of came with that. He's a good guy. He's got a good heart. Of course, he's got some flaws and skeletons in his closet, but he's noble. And comes from way out west, from Bend, Oregon. Comes to big bad New York City. Gets the job of his dreams, working as a newspaper reporter alongside his idol, this guy Jack O'Donnell. And Henry's also a little angry. He's pissed off because he feels that reporters recently they've superseded their bylines. They become more well known than the subject they're supposed to write about, and that kind of goes against every standard of being a journalist, in Henry's opinion. So he really wants to take back the kind of old school ethics that journalism was founded on. Of course, this doesn't end up happening. Henry ends up accused of murder, ends up on the run, the subject of a nationwide manhunt, and ironically becomes the very thing that he despises the most, which is a reporter who's become larger than everything he tried to write about. I didn't want Henry to be a Superman. I didn't want him to be a government killer or a trained assassin or a spy. I wanted him to be a regular person that pretty much had the same skill set that a regular person might have. So if he's in trouble, really the only thing he has to rely on is things that you or I might be able to rely on. So he's got his head, he's got his heart, he's got whatever knowledge he's picked up over the years, and he's got one brave woman who takes a chance on him and kind of saves his life. And it's really up to the two of them to figure out what the heck is going on, because they're on the run from some really bad people who want to do some really bad things to them. Another reason I wrote The Mark is because I wanted to write the kind of mystery or thriller that took place over a very condensed period of time. The bulk of The Mark takes place over 3 days. And I wanted it to be that way because I wanted every page you read, I wanted you to know where the characters were. Not just the characters you're reading about at that moment, but the characters who you weren't reading about. So maybe the bad guys, or the people chasing Henry, or somebody else. I thought it would be really cool if you're reading about Henry one page and you kind of know that somebody else is doing something. I thought it created a good sense of tension, kind of almost a book-long sense of, don't go in that room. Really suspenseful because the reader sometimes might be a step ahead of Henry, as well as some of the other characters who are looking to do some pretty bad things to him. Trying to think what else. My next book is called The Guilty. It comes out February 26, 2008. And for those of you that haven't read The Mark, I really love this story. And the genesis for this story was when I was writing The Mark, I kind of knew that I wanted to obviously write more books after that, but at that point I had no idea if The Mark would actually be published. So I started kind of toying with the inklings of a story in my mind, the villain mainly, and the story surrounding it. And I knew that if the mark sold, I would hope that it would sell as part of a series, so I could write more Henry Parker novels. So if it did, it would be very easy to take the characters from the mark and put them into this new plot. If it didn't, I loved the plot so much that I would create new characters around it. And thankfully, Mira bought my books and are publishing them, and I was able to take Henry and put him into this really terrific plot that I've had a lot of fun doing. I think if you haven't read The Mark, you're going to enjoy the story. If you have read The Mark, it's really great to see how the characters develop. It's great to see a new plot and kind of ratcheting things up a little bit in every sense of the word, both characters, both pacing, see where Henry and Amanda go from here. So now what I want to do is do something that I'm hoping to do in every vlog, is take a couple questions from readers. And I want to start off by answering this one, which is probably the question that I'm asked more than anything, which is really surprising to me, is where I come up with characters' names. And to me, that's kind of the easy part. It kind of, for the most part, comes out of thin air, where you're writing about a character and a name just pops up, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And really, every character I wrote, I came up with just like that. I thought of a name, and if that name fit, I stuck with it. If it didn't fit, I chose a new name for them. The only character where that wasn't the case was Henry. I wanted Henry's name to be kind of unusual. Henry's a younger guy, and I'd never met anybody under probably the age of 40 or 50 named Henry. And I thought that would be a really cool way to show that Henry is stuck between two worlds. That he's a younger guy, but he's really stuck between kind of old school journalism and this new school, both the advancing technology that the newspaper industry is having to deal with. And that he kind of has to deal with that. He has to deal with being the new face of his industry, but also just kind of being a kid out of college. So that's where that came from. I want to take one more question also, which is a little different, and it has to do with my favorite baseball team, New York Mets. And this comes from Dave in New Jersey. And he wants to know if I could meet any Met and say something to them, who would it be and what would I say? And I'm going to have to ask for two Mets here. The Mets, they kind of had a disappointing end to the 2000 season, so I'd like to take aside David Wright and Jose Reyes and really ask them what the heck they were thinking when they did that GQ photo shoot at the beginning of the year, where they kind of looked like the Village People. I think that just ruined the Mets karmatically for the 2007 season. So if I see any one of them go near a pair of chaps or gel their hair in a freaky way, I'm going to have a serious talk with them. So this is it. This is the first installment of my vlog, and I want to end it by recommending another book that I read recently, and I'm hoping to do that every week, do a book recommendation. And my first book recommendation is L.A. Requiem by Robert Crace, which is just absolutely fantastic. It takes Elvis Cole and Joe Pike, and what I love about it is that it's not just a great detective story, but it's probably the most emotional book that Crace has written, possibly to date. Joe Pike's always been kind of an enigmatic character, but this book you really learn where Pike came from, what made him who he is today, and it doesn't kind of ruin him by giving away too much of the mystique, but if anything, it kind of makes you like him more because you understand what he had to go through and why he is what he is. And I always love that in stories, when you have, whether it's a hero or a villain that has some sort of aura to them, some sort of mystery, if you learn just enough about their backstory so that it adds to the aura instead of takes away from it, and you understand their motivations for being what they are. So anyway, this is my very first vlog. Hopefully in the upcoming weeks we'll actually figure out a title for this thing. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm trying to kind of think of a good way to end these things. Unfortunately, all the good sign-offs are taken, like Stay Classy San Diego, or good night and good luck. So I'm just going to say, please leave Brittany alone. She's a human being, and she doesn't deserve it. And until next week, thanks a lot.